Hey, hey, how are you folks doing? Chris Courtney here, new Pragmatic. Just getting things started. Waiting for the feedback loop to kick in. We're in the pre-show. You know how this goes. You've been here before. You know how we do this. Um, just doing a little rundown review. Um, checking out. Uh, it's really interesting. The Internet of Things is really just speeding up. Um, don't know if you have seen any of the stories about smart cities and monitoring and the way that the world is kind of reorienting itself because of in the wake of COVID. It's there's a lot of stories floating around. If you don't subscribe to Fast Company Design Co, um, great subscription to jump into. I've got one through FeedBurner and the story this morning talking about how smart cities are going to really start kicking in because we've got to monitor temperatures and things like that and how you design for that human experience. Really interesting stuff. Also, kind of along the same lines, Tesla yesterday announced it was going to do a insurance company, and most of it would just be automated based on your driving habits. So it's going to and they're actually getting that data from the car. So it's kind of rethinking how the merger of data and human activity. I mean, it's actually not rethinking; it's really more tightly coupling that together, and how we, the question is, how do we give people feedback in those systems? How do we guide them through a smart city that's constantly monitoring temperature and um, or vehicles that are constantly monitoring our usage of them. Um, really, really interesting activities that are becoming a thing. Um, so while we're waiting on right now is couchbot to take off. Um, and oh, by the way, um, we always talk about things coming back from the past. Design artifacts. What was once a thing becomes a thing again. One of the greatest things that I've seen in a while is the Rosie the Riveter bandana. Rosie the Riveter is we can do it the from World War II. The woman factory line worker with flexing her muscles. She had a bandana on her head that was polka dot, and now they've remade it into a mask, a polka dot red and white polka dot mask. Really cool thing um, to see coming. Really cool retro artifact coming out. And speaking of artifacts that are produced by an era, um, Black Lives Matter has produced an artifact that was relatively unused. Like we haven't seen this. We haven't seen on the scale it's being used. Um, in Washington D.C., they painted a strip of DC. I think it's now called Black Lives Matter Way, and they painted this strip for the movement, and we've not used public ways that way. Typically, it's like we'll paint a wall, but we haven't painted streets really before at that scale. Um, what does that lead to? What does that lead to? Like when we think of imagery from above, what do we do with that as designers? Um, because you can obviously, when you're painting in 50-foot tall letters, that gives you a giant canvas to say and do things with. Um, how could that how can that be used in our cities, eh, at a scale that you can actually do something with it, functional? Um, I just think it's pretty interesting. There are unintended consequences of those things. First of all, I think it's pretty cool. I like it when we take something that we've done before and we kind of flip it around and do something different with it. I think it opens up new ways of thinking about the art form. But at the same time, I wonder, okay, so that's different. What are the positive ways we can use that, and what are the negative ways? What are the negative things? Like, one of the obvious negative things is like, okay, well, that's now going to be a target for people to write over it, to scribble over it, to deface it. And I see that in my neighborhood all the time. Not necessarily with like something that's Black Lives Matter related, but there was a great, just fantastic, beautiful mural showing women of all different cultures, and it was really meant to be a women's rights mural, and somebody went by and tagged it. And it's if there's anything I hate, it's like simple tagging. And I say that as somebody who's done graffiti before, and murals and whatnot as a kid, and I really hate it when people go through and they just like randomly write some scribbles over a nice piece. It bugs me. It's like, well, that was lazy. Like, if you're gonna bother to deface something, like put something up that really matters. There was one in particular in my neighborhood. Mother Teresa visited Pilsen eons ago, decades ago, and they painted a mural on the wall. It's been there for probably like 40 years, and somebody came along and painted over that. They painted over it, and I'm almost certain that they were doing it for BLM. Okay, and say what you will about the movement, there's like miles of wall to choose from, yet they painted over Mother Teresa. And it's like, I respect the movement, but that's Mother Teresa who visited here. So can we not do that? Can we take that message to the right or left of Mother Teresa? Can we leave Mother Teresa? So it's all about it's all about preserving like the really truly commendable, or the truly notable. Like Mother Teresa coming to your neighborhood, that's a notable thing. Okay, you want to keep those notable things intact. And one thing I love about the movement around here, as we continue to wait for couchbutt to fire, one of the things that I love about the movement that's happening around here is that so often, and it looks like my tray is still up. All right, there we go. Sorry. Gosh, where is couchbutt, by the way? This is crazy. At some point it will catch up, and I'm just gonna leave the station. But one of the last thing I was gonna say is, with the growth of, all cities go through this period where they're breaking out and becoming more progressive, and as they become more progressive, you see more and more street murals. I love that, but that doesn't mean that I disliked the murals that we had before. All right, so it's kind of like, we can paint murals until we run out of space, but until we run out of space, don't paint over any of the existing murals. If you want to restore an existing mural, that's cool, but don't just paint over one just because you want that space. That space was already taken. You got to find another space. And in a city with hundreds of miles of walls and bricks and concrete, you can find space. And that's the thing that would, that's, when we paint these murals, we're adding to a system of mural, an existing system. How can you add to the world that you're operating in? We talk about systems design in the program, and systems design is not just eradicating what came before. It's enhancing. It's paying homage to. It's recognizing, not just deleting. So keep that in mind. We're gonna move this on though, because couchbutt. I don't know where couchbutt is. We are streaming. I will check YouTube just really fast to make sure that there's not an error there, because I want to make sure we don't lose. I want to make sure we don't lose this. But it is a little odd that couchbutt is drag. Oh, says we're live right now. So hey, guess what? That tells me we're good to go. We're going to knock this out and move forward. All right. So, greetings one and all. Chris Courtney here, new Pragmatic. It's time for the feedback loop. I hope that you are doing well wherever you happen to be. Today we've got Katie, we've got Charlie, we've got Eve in here. Slight switch up, and I'm super excited to get going. So let's go ahead and get this underway. So right away, right off the top, we've got Eve's case study, and Eve's case study is these case studies are put together in a manner that is it follows priority guides, where we're gonna do this in waves. So it's determining what sections you're going to talk about, then adding a little content and moving forward. So right away, Eve's got her overview section. It's like what the product does, main problem, final solution, her role, design artifacts produced, product or service, and then a link to the prototype. She has this learned section, observational research, survey, competitor research, competitive testing, user flows, mapping, story mapping, sketches, wireframes, overall. Okay, so I think you went. I loved how deep you went on learned. Learned is supposed. Learned should be more of a, what did I learn from the project, and written from that perspective, not necessarily written from the perspective of each individual method. Writing what you learned during each individual method may get a little too in the weeds. When I ask, think about it like this: when I ask you, what did you learn by work? And let's go through the interview thing. So what did you learn from that project? You wouldn't say, well, doing it observational research, I learned this, and when doing surveys, I learned that. You wouldn't couch it by a particular method. You would jump in and you would talk about, well, it did open my eyes to a wealth of information that I could gather just by doing observation. So I would like to see this a little more conversational. That does mean that you can distill this a bit. And I'm glad that you the cool thing here about the way you did it is you have a lot of observations that can be added to this and be part of this what I learned section, but I don't necessarily think that you have to go through and label user flows and then what you learn from that, label affinity mapping and then what you learn from that. So keep that in mind as you're moving forward to distill this down and make it a bit more conversational than you have it right now. These other areas, like as we come down to process, process how you research the project, observational research, competitor research. This is where you're going through and competitor testing, target user information. This is where you're going through and section by section breaking down how you got from problem to solution. And here I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it being longer. I'm fine with it being about a paragraph per. But Eve, the big thing I want to focus here on for you is I remember the first time you went through and did this, and it was like a month just trying to get the lift. And I think by doing this in drafts and iterations, iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3, I think you're able to put together an arc much faster this way. And this is coming together. So the thing to keep in mind here is there will be, like sketches, wireframes. Um, you know, note where your artifacts are. Okay, and once you've noted where your artifacts are, this is where I would probably um, come together and well, this is interesting. So we have display iterative arc of visual solution story mapping, priority guides, sketches, wireframes. And then you have analysis of testing rounds, competitive analysis, affinity mapping, user personas, user stories, flows, prototype, high fidelity. This feels a little bit out of order because like competitive analysis and affinity mapping happened before any of this. Like I know it happened before the story mapping and priority guides. So I wonder if that bit of it is somehow needs to be moved so that this fits more together in a chronological. Because remember, the process is a bit more chronological in nature, unless your goal is to say, okay, I'm telling this more by theme, and I'm kind of breaking apart the chronological. And if that's the case, I would want to like denote that somewhere through here. This is a theme-based. So while the project moved in chronological order, I have resorted the information here to present the information more based along themes. You do that. We can do that a lot with like our about pages. I don't typically see that when we're doing a process breakdown, but that's what stuck out when we got down here is like I know this information came a bit earlier in the process. Okay. Otherwise, I see the conclusion. I think you've got a lot of information, and I know it feels really long, and that's okay. I would always rather edit down than have to pad out. All right. And keep in mind, as I've stated before, the case study is really for you. What somebody's going to come through and where they're going to spend their time is they're going to read your overview, okay? They're going to read what you learned, and then they're going to take a peek at your process. Now your process, that's your notes, and they may, if somebody's really serious about hiring you, they'll go through it. Everybody else is just going to kind of look at it and go, oh wow, okay, there's a lot of content here. And oh, she's got some artifacts of this stuff, and that's all they're going to do with it. They're not going to read through the whole thing. Don't worry if your case study is super long, it's not a big deal, provided that people can get a sense for what you're doing, for what you've done, provided that you have illustrated to them what you've learned, and you've given them a link to the work. If you've got that at the top, really the rest of it, it's optional whether they look at it or not. Okay, so that's why the top, that really focusing on hitting the message and winning them over in that first 30 seconds, maybe a minute. That's the most you're going to get with a lot of people that are coming through and doing the first scan. Making sure you have that nailed down is going to be key. But past that, I wouldn't worry about it. Okay, just let it ride. If we want to edit it, we can do that later. All right, don't worry about editing it right now. Worry about distilling this down to make it a little more conversational, and then getting the order of the process arranged properly. And again, if you're doing it in themes, let's just denote that at the top. All right, so next let's go to Katie. Katie has her latest version of the components exercise. I'm going to go ahead and put this into prototype mode. so we can take a peek.
And couchbutt still has not fired, so I apologize for anybody who's trying to follow along. Something's
gone wrong, but I know we're live. All right, so Katie has she's got her results for the chicken recipe search. As we go through, you can kind of get a sense of the project. She flipped out the logo there. I did notice these. Looks like these might be social media icons like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You might want to fill those in just to give it a finished feel. As we go through, obviously, this is something that instead of having it like just like on hover just like instantly, I would put like a fade on that. You can delay it to where it just kind of gently fades in and out. I'd probably make that adjustment. As we click through though, here we are, and it's presenting the information back. So you fixed that little issue. One interesting thing that Katie did was she created this little carousel, which I think is really well done. And this is another spot where I think instead of doing auto animate, which we talked about yesterday, just a gentle fade would be useful. Also, it's clickable if you go down here, and I noticed that you clean that up, which is nice. Then we've got ingredients, and it's kind of interesting because if we look, I think this is actually probably on. Yeah, it's on. Okay. I will say this: the line height here feels pretty big. So I would check that out. The line. Oh, that's interesting. Did I zoom in or something? Yeah, well, the line height here is pretty big by comparison with the ingredients. Notice you've got the misspelling here, but then it goes to proper spelling there. So clean that up. But look at the line height that we have with that by comparison with this. It's like it's totally different. So and it might be that thing where you had that 44 in there early on. So let's clean that up. But you've got this. It's a nice animation. It just needs a couple of cleanups, and I would size that line up to match with the word that it's underneath. Like it's and it's also not moving at this point. So like it's fine to fade back and forth like it does, but yesterday we had it moving, like it was moving over. I'm not sure if you want that auto. That was auto, not auto layout. Sorry. It was animate. And to do that, you would need to, let's go in here and go to prototype mode. Okay, so it looks like you're over here, and yeah, the interaction here, like there should be like an on click. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to figure out why. Oh, maybe it's not on that one. Maybe it's on this one. Let's take a peek. No, it's not showing an interaction at all there. So this takes you to this page. And when you click on this, yeah, it's not showing an interaction, but if I was really doing this, I'd say on click, go navigate to, go to meal page image 6. Oh, this is for images. Okay, I see the issue. I see the issue. I'm gonna leave that alone. Let's just take that off. I just need to find the page where you're really doing that, and maybe can't be on that page. I'm really not sure where this animation exists at. It seems to not exist, but walking you through it, let's just do the walkthrough. So on click, navigate to, we can go to anywhere really, and instead of instant, it'd be smart animate. Okay, so that's what you're looking for, and then smart animate gives you that animation. We're gonna turn that off though, because obviously it wasn't part of. I don't want to change your design, so I'll let you go in and clean that up. And then as we scroll down, these look great. Um, I don't necessarily know if the like line halfway is ideal, but um, something for you to decide. If we go back to home, yeah, I guess it's in there as a style. So you're using that as a style. It's fine. But I do think that there's just a little bit of there's some refinements. Okay, you're very close, but there are some refinements that are necessary here. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at Charlie before we wrap this up. So Charlie has design reads, and design reads. It's kind of in the same spot that Pandora was yesterday, in that we have the design reads header up here at the top, and then as we come in, we've got this collision with the typography down below. It's a little better in that the hierarchy isn't as out of whack, because design reads is significantly larger. I do wonder if this should be paired with the intro. It says intro here, but this information is just kind of floating around. I wonder if this should either be moved up or if design reads should be moved down. And then you've got this prototype. The prototype is in purple, but this is in dark blue, but that is in blue. So it seems like there's some disconnect here between the items. Additionally, I think wherever you end up with Pandora, which you're working on right now, I would come through and make those same adjustments here. This design is struggling. There's just not enough to it. These don't link to anything. I think that if I was going to come through and redesign this, I would make a column over here for Goodreads library thing Twitter, just to show who that you studied, and then this area over here I would simply make it a wide left and a narrow right inside of the grid structure that you have, and you're good to go. User research. We talked about these boxes yesterday for Pandora. There's no reason these should be images. I think that we kind of covered this yesterday. Simplification of this display would be helpful. I do like it that it's not on the edge like the issue with yesterday, but at the same time, there's really this information can be distilled down and simplified. And then the user persona, and we've kind of talked about this. There's no reason that this face for Megan Wade needs to be by itself in this design. I think if anything, you could put her over here to the side, and then bring motivations, goals, frustrations all over. So, this is the opposite of what we talked about doing with the competitive analysis, in that over there you had a wide left and narrow right. Here I would just flip the dynamic, and I'd have a narrow left, which is where I put her information, and then I would have a wide right. And if you did this, I would follow that same dynamic for Pandora. Okay? And, this isn't like super hard to do, but it is something that I think would improve the design greatly. As we come down, we've got user flow. You can't really see the user flow, so I'm not necessarily sold that it has to be here. You can't see it now. You're definitely not going to be able to see it on mobile. So this is an area where I might come in and say user stories and flows, and just combine these two concepts and leave a link. Okay, because there's just not a lot that you can show. There are some aspects that I think there are some ways to present this information that I've seen other people do, but it's never like the display of the flow. It's always like go to the link so you can see it and zoom around as desired. Okay. Wireframes. Now this is where you're getting into something that's a bit more interesting. Um, rough paper sketches, mid fidelity prototypes, iterations based on testing. And again, this is we talked about this. This is all doing the same basic job. We need hierarchy here. It's not, you currently don't have it. Additionally, one other thing that I wanted to talk about was the design of the artifacts at the very top, because I see kind of some issues happening here where this stuff is like really close to the edge. And I spotted that up here. Like, notice like there's little inconsistencies in the design. So you have you've decided to put this in a frame. Okay, a lot of people do it. I don't really think it's necessary, but a lot of people like to see it on an iPhone X. That's great. But when you do that, like, you've got to have proper clearance. Like right down here, the profile would never run right into the edge of the border. The information bar here, status bar rather, would never run right into the edge of the corner. And notice that the time is in a slightly different spot between these two screens, and same thing for the rest of the status bar. So, like, there's something going on. This isn't quite laid out, utilizing those best practices for iOS. I'm guessing this is like 11 or 12, because this is a little while ago. So I really think that, like, this could use some adjustment of the actual design artifacts that are being shown. There's nothing against improving this. I mean, in my opinion, when you're working through your first projects, the goal is to have them be as good as humanly possible, and that means that even if you've gone through and elevated them later, that's okay. James was going through the program just a little while ago, and he had a project where we were really working through an existing app that he had created. It's like, listen, this is not following the guidelines as closely as they could. Let's go through and elevate this. And that's the advice I'm giving you now is like, yes, we can talk about the function and the formatting of the case study, but there's still a little bit of work that needs to be done on the artifacts themselves. Okay? So with that, I'm going to leave it there. I do apologize, couchbutt being belligerent today, but it definitely did not fire. And we're going to put a pause in it right there. I'm going to go figure out where and why couchbutt abandoned us today. And we're going to wrap it up. So this has been the feedback loop for, what day is it? Is it Thursday? It's Thursday. Wow. Thursday came here really fast. I hope that you are all well where you are, and I'm meeting with many of you today, some of you right now. So I will bid you adieu. See ya.